Good evening. So today's gospel is talking about one of the most important virtues in Christian life, that is humility. So we learn that the way to follow Jesus is the way to become servants, the way to serve God and people in our life. And in today's gospel, Jesus says, the greatest among you must be your servants. The greatest among you must be your servants. So why is the virtue of humility so important for each one of us and for Christian life? So a parishioner asked St. Augustine this question, Father, what are the most important things in Christian life? And he answered, the most important things in Christian life are the first, humility, the second, humility, and the third, humility. So if pride is a root of all sins, so the virtue of humility is the root, the mother, the nurse, and the foundation of all the virtues. And we can see many examples in the gospel about humility. Jesus Christ himself is the greatest example of humility, as he says, learn from me, for I am meek and humble of heart. Or St. Paul says about Jesus, Jesus humbled himself, becoming obedient to death, even the death of the cross. Or St. Paul says about himself that, I am the least of the apostles, and I am the very least of all saints, and I am the foremost of sinners. This is similar to what St. John the Baptist said about Jesus and about himself. He said, he must increase, and I must decrease. So humility helps us to recognize our littleness, our weaknesses, and especially to recognize who we are. And humility helps us make more room for God. And when we empty ourselves, we create more room for God and for people. And also, humility is the way to grow in holiness. It is the way of Jesus Christ, the way of discipleship, and the way of each one of us. My dear friends, it is completely different from what the Pharisees did. And in the gospel, Jesus strongly criticizes the Pharisees for their hypocrisy. And in the gospel, many times, Jesus mentioned the word hypocrisy to talk about the Pharisees and the religious leaders of the Jews. And it is similar to what God says about his people in the Old Testament. In the book of Prophet Isaiah, God says, these people honors me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. That's why Pope Francis says to each one of us, hypocrisy is not the language of Jesus. Hypocrisy is not the language of Christians. And a hypocrite cannot be a Christian cannot be a hypocrite. And also, Pope Francis says, hypocrisy destroys the church and hurts the community. My dear brothers and sisters, we believe that for Jesus Christ, everything goes back to the heart. Everything goes back to love. And the law of Jesus is the law of love. The law of Jesus is the law of the Beatitudes. The law of Jesus helps us to attain true peace, true happiness, and true joy. And the law of Jesus helps us to figure out many ways to make an encounter with God, with Jesus Christ. And the law of Jesus also a journey leading to God. And in this journey, Jesus invites one of us, come to me, all who labor and are burdened, and I will give you rest. And the law of Jesus is not much about what we do, but how we do. Not much about our actions, but much about our relationship with God and with one another. And we believe that the law of Jesus is easy, not because it allows us to do anything. Instead, the law of Jesus is easy because when we are weak, Jesus is so strong, as St. Paul mentioned. And the law of Jesus is easy because Jesus never commands us to do anything by ourselves. Instead, God is always abiding us. God is always with us. God is always supporting us in our circumstances and in all things. My dear brothers and sisters, following Jesus is not a matter of listening, talking, or saying, but a matter of obeying, transforming, renewing, and working. And sometimes or many times, we may be the Pharisees. Sometimes or many times, we may be the hypocrites because we act differently from what we say and we do differently from what we talk. And some people claim themselves to be Catholics, but they fail to come to the church. Some people say much about dedicating their lives to God, but they fail to make time for God in their prayers. Some people say much about sacrificing their life and love God above all things, but they fail to sacrifice their own desires. And some people say much about being faithful to God, but they fail to deepen their faith, their hope, their love in Jesus Christ. That's why we preach the Gospels not just by our mouth, but by our commitment to God, by our love to God and to one another, and by our actions in our life. And Pope Paul says that people today want to listen to witnesses more than to the teachers. If they listen to the teachers, it is because they are witnesses. And I believe that each one of us present here is the witness of Jesus Christ. And we come here today and every time for Holy Mass, not because of our duty, not because of our responsibility, but because of our love. We come here because we love God. We come here because we love one another. It is a kind of love that St. Paul mentioned in his letter to the Corinthians. He says, love is patient, love is kind, love doesn't boast, love doesn't envy, love doesn't dishonor others, love always trusts, always believes, always endures, always forgives. Love never ends, love never fails. And St. Teresa of Child Jesus says, my vocation is love, and among the church I will be love. And it is similar to each one of us. Our vocation is love, And among the church, we will be love for God and for others. My dear friends, the question for us to reflect on, based on today's gospel, is that, are we willing to choose to become another Christ or to choose to become the Pharisees? Are we willing to choose the life of humility, the life of love, the life of forgiveness, the life of mercy, or the life of envy, the life of impatience, the life of hatred? The answer depends on each one of us.